There's no denying that SRAM's Eagle group sets, all the way from NX Eagle up to XX1 Eagles, kind of redefined the mountain bike drivetrain. Shimano perhaps seemed that they were lagging behind a little bit. Their cassettes were never as wide-ranging, and when they were, there was big steps between the gears. And many of us felt that they didn't really get one-by drivetrains. Shimano's product cycle is as predictable as the Japanese train system, and we knew that there was going to be a new XTR coming about this time, so rumours were rife about what it was going to be. Shimano released their M9100 series XTR pretty recently, and myself and my colleague in the US, Josh Patterson, have had a chance to go and ride the new group sets, and we both came away incredibly impressed, as you would hope from Shimano's top flight group set. In the video description there are links to various articles on BikeRadar.com with all the tech specs, prices and weights that you might be interested in, so if you are looking for specific details, check the links. But as a general overview, XTR is perhaps one of the most versatile group sets on the market. If you're an XC racer who wants the absolute lightweight, nice close ratios, there's a group set for you. If you're a trail rider who's looking for powerful brakes and a wide-ranging group set, there's an option for you as well. And finally, if you are one of those people who do want a 2x system, yes, you can get that with XTR. The most obvious departure for XTR, other than going 12 speed, is that the Cassette has that huge 510% range, 10 up to 51 tooth, and yes, that is an extra tooth over the Eagle 50 tooth. Now some will definitely say that Shimano are just trying to beat SRAM by having that extra tooth on the biggest sprocket of the Cassette, and perhaps there is an element of that. But the reason Shimano say why they did this was because they like to have consistent gaps between all the gearing, and because of the design of the Hyperglide Plus cassette means that their shifting gates, or the points at which the chain jumps from one sprocket to another sprocket, necessitated the use of 51 rather than a 50. As well as helping the chain move inboard up the cassette, the point of Hyperglide Plus is to help the chain move down into harder gears smoothly when you're putting the power through the pedals. Traditionally, the chain effectively drops down to a smaller sprocket. With Hyperglide Plus, the chain is guided down to give that smoother feeling shift. Because I was testing the bike and because Hyperglide Plus is a big thing, I did a lot of crunching through the gears at very inopportune moments whenever possible. So this would be on steep climbs, I would smash through a few gears at a time just to sort of see how the chain reacts, or if I was on the flat I might have the brakes on and really try and crunch up and down the cassette to see how smooth and how good it really is. And I have to say, with the changes to the cassette and also the design of the inner plates of the chain, which is very geeky and we will go into in a separate article on BikeRadar, the result is very good. The latest generation of XTR seems to have a very positive shift through the gears. Given that the ratios between gears are relatively consistent across the whole cassette, you can really feel and you really have an audible warning of when you have changed gear. The gear change is incredibly smooth up and down, but that positivity through the shifter is a really positive thing I think for XTR. There's no qualms as to whether you have or haven't quite shifted if you're riding in sort of slippy, muddy terrain. You just know that it's worked. In the short amount of time I spent riding XTR, obviously the wear on the cassette was something I couldn't measure, but it's interesting that the cassette is made of 3 different materials. The bottom 4 gears are made of steel, so that's where there are less teeth, so more load per teeth. So the heavier, more durable material is used. In the middle of the cassette are titanium sprockets, and this is to give a balance between lower weight and durability. The top sprockets are aluminium. This is primarily there to save weight, and because the chain is engaging with more teeth, the wear is lower per teeth, basically. So Shimano say that you get the best of both worlds. You get plenty of longevity from the cassette, with also quite a low weight. And the weight itself is very, very similar to within a few grams of an XX1 Eagle cassette. So weight weenies don't have to worry about which is going to be heavier or lighter. The cassette itself is mounted to Shimano's new standard, which is their microspline free hub. There will be a lot of people who aren't happy about the fact that there is a new free hub standard out there, but this is necessary to be able to use a 10-tooth sprocket on the cassette. The microspline free hub sits onto the new Shimano Silence hub. The Silence name refers to the fact that, well, there's no noise, it's a silent free hub. Some people really like this. I think it sounds, well, it doesn't sound great because you can't hear it, but it's really nice to sort of have that silence as you're rolling along. You only really hear the tyres or the brakes sort of working, or your suspension squelching, instead of having that buzz from the back wheel. The hub itself has a really quick engagement. It's about 7 to 8 degrees, I think. And throughout the testing, I had no issues with the hub. It engages nice and quickly. The silence is, as I said, really good. And overall, I was pretty impressed. At the front of the drivetrain is the new set of cranks from Shimano. They've always been well known for creating some of the best cranks on the market, both in terms of weight, stiffness, price, durability, pretty much everything. I think they are pretty much the market leaders, even though they don't have a carbon crank. And the new generation of XTR cranks continues this theme. The new Holotech design is actually a bonded system, so two halves of the crank are bonded together. Shimano say that this gives them better control of the internal profiling of the crank to have material where it's needed and not where it's not, to give a lighter crank. You also get a direct mount chainring, so instead of having a spider, it fits onto the back of the crank with its own tool, which does come included with the cranks. This system lets you change between a wider enduro or effectively boost setup, or a slightly narrow Q-factor crank system, or a 2x system as well if you are running that. Finally, on the drivetrain side of things is the shifter. This is relatively similar to previous generations of XTR, although the I-spec clamping system has been updated, so there's a lot more adjustment both around the bars and side to side, so it should fit with a lot more hands very easily. One of the things I've always liked about the higher end Shimano shifters is that the release lever, which is the one to shift into a harder gear at the back, has a double click. SRAM only have a single, so this makes it really easy to bang it into higher gears. And as you'd expect, this remains on XTR. It is only available when you push the little thumb lever. When you pull it back, you only get a single release, and this is because there's not quite enough real estate in there to get enough throw for a dual release. Some people have worried that having a dual release on the push means you might overshift, but I think that the second click to shift that second gear is a little bit harder to push through than the first one, so it kind of catches you if you only want to do one at a time, and I never found myself overshifting. If you are going to run a 2x system, they have a completely new shifter, and this is really smart, I think, although not many people are ever going to use it. The shifter for the 2x is a push-push. So there's only one lever. You push it to pull the cable through, which shifts it onto the bigger chainring. And then to release onto the smaller, it's just a further little push, which clicks the ratchet and it releases the spring tension. So it's a really nice and simple design. Whether it really has that much benefit over anything else, I'm not so sure, but it does keep life a little bit simpler, so you're not having to worry about what you're doing if you're in a race situation and you're tired and you're having to deal with all the other things going on. It is quite smart.
Hello.
That's the gears taken care of, but the other thing to talk about is obviously the new brakes, and there are two different options here. There's a lightweight 2-piston XC brake with the race lever, and there's a 4-piston trail brake with a trail lever as well. I only spent a little bit of time riding the 2-piston brake, but the power was as you'd expect from a lightweight 2-piston brake. There was plenty there, it wasn't mind-blowing, but it seemed pretty consistent. The 4-pot brakes I rode more extensively. Shimano have often had a reputation, especially on their more powerful brakes such as the Saint, for having quite a digital feel, you know, you're either braking or you're not. Shimano said that they wanted to get the power of the Saint brake, but the modulation of a regular 2-piston trail brake. And I think they've achieved this pretty well. There is a lot of power available from those brakes, but it is very well controlled. So on muddy, slippy, slidey terrain, you can still feather the brakes nicely so that you're not over braking. But when you need that power, you can haul on the anchors pretty well. In addition to the new calipers down below, the levers both in the XC and the Trail have seen some revisions for M9100. And these have actually made a surprising difference to the lever feel. Instead of just having a single clamp, you now get an additional support. So when you tighten the clamp, this little semicircular support presses into the bar a little bit and prevents the lever body flexing under heavy braking. It's a very simple way of boosting the stiffness into the lever body, but it's one that I think is very smart and works very well. The XC brake gets a carbon lever with reach adjustment through a little screw behind the lever. The Trail brake, as in previous iterations, gets a more obvious reach adjust and also the free stroke adjustment in there. The new XTR is very expensive, but it is the pinnacle of Shimano's group sets. In the UK, it's going to cost you £935, and in the US, it's $1,273, and that's for the gears on a 1x12 group set. The brakes are also very expensive. So in the UK, the XC brakes will cost you £580, and in the US, it's going to be $600. The trail brakes, they're £580 in the UK, $650 in the US, which probably puts them at some of the most expensive brakes on the market at the moment. As we know from Shimano though, the trickle-down effect will be in full flow over the next couple of years. Expect to see wide-ranging cassettes in XT, then SLX and then Dior, I reckon, over the next few years. What they should do, I think, is drop it down to SLX level immediately, because this would open it out to a whole range of bikes, and I think you would start to see a bit more of a dominance of Shimano back into the trail market. At the moment we only have claimed weights for the Shimano group set. However, for the gears alone, so excluding the brakes, it comes in at 1,466 grams for a 12-speed 10 to 51 setup. This compares very well to SRAM's XX1 Eagle group set, which we've weighed at 1,456 grams, so there's only a 10 gram difference in there. However, if you drop your XTR group set down to the 1x11 with the 10 to 45 cassette, you'll save a bit of weight there. And given that this wider range group set that we have the weights for is arguably aimed at trail riders, you'll be saving a bit of weight over the equivalent XO1 group set, which does have a little bit more weight than the XX1. So in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is the weight is very similar to SRAM, so don't worry about it. The obvious departures for Shimano with the new XTR is that it's gone 12 speed and there is a proper wide-ranging cassette. And these are obviously going to appeal to people. I think the biggest change though is the quality of the shifting, and this has improved dramatically with the Hyperglide Plus technology. It was very good before, it is incredibly good now. The fact that Shimano offer such a range of available options for the bike, from 11 speed, wider ranging cassettes, different cranks, 2x at the front, I do think that if you've got pockets deep enough, there will be an XTR group set for you. If it was me, I would probably go with XTR over the SRAM equivalents. If you're an XC racer, then the slightly narrower Q factor cranks with the 10 to 45 cassette with those much more refined gaps makes a lot of sense. It's a very light group set. It's comparable with XX1 Eagle. If you're a trail or enduro rider, get that wider cassette, the 12 speed with a 10 to 51 range with consistent gaps between the gears and great shifting under power. You would also then benefit from the more powerful brakes. It seems that Shimano have created a group set that has an option for everyone who has pockets deep enough for it. The new XTR is going to be available late in the summer, so we'll be getting our hands on a couple of sets here at BikeRadar. I for one will be subjecting my group set to a full winter reviews here in the UK and hopefully abroad. Once I've had a really good chance to ride the group set over a prolonged period of time, we'll bring you a full review of the new Shimano XTR.